Welcome back to video number 2, where we're talking adjacent and vertical angles. Now we're going to talk about using these adjacent and vertical angles and to identify. We're going to identify vertical and adjacent angles, and we're also going to use that to find some values. Okay, so right here, using adjacent and vertical angles, tell whether the angles are adjacent or vertical, and then find the value of x. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to decide, are these angles adjacent or vertical? And I notice right now, I do not see intersecting lines. Okay, there's nothing intersecting. This line here does not go all the way through. It does not. So that means the only thing I can have is adjacent, because I have two angles, one here, one here. They're sharing a side and a vertex. So right now I'm going to call these, I'm going to erase that because I don't want to. These are adjacent angles. These angles are adjacent. Okay? They're right next to each other. They share a vertex and a common side. I'll leave it like that. Now we got to find the value of x. So here's something that you may or may not know. This angle here, there's an angle that goes all the way straight across here. This is called a straight angle. And straight angles equal 180 degrees. How do I know it's an angle? Because it has a vertex right here. It has a vertex right there where those other two angles share that vertex. So there's the arrow there and there's the arrow there. That is a straight angle, and straight angles equal 180 degrees. Knowing that, I can take these two adjacent angles, 132, and I can add the other one, and I know that those two adjacent angles form a straight angle that is equal to 180 degrees. Now I can solve this equation by subtracting the 132 from both sides, and I get that the value of x is 48 degrees. Okay? Very easy done. So, something to remember, straight angles are 180 degrees. Moving on. Tell whether these angles are adjacent or vertical and find the value of x. I see two lines that intersect. They have a vertex right here in the center. I know opposite angles are vertical. And since these two angles are opposite, x and 110, the ones they're telling us, then I know that these are vertical. And the one thing I know about vertical angles is that vertical angles are congruent. Congruent meaning they have the same measure. Okay, I'm not going to write that every time, but vertical angles are congruent. They have the same measure. So then what do we know about these two? Well, we know that angle x, has to equal angle 110. So x is equal to 110, as well as the opposite vertical angle is 110. Pretty dang darn easy when they're vertical. Okay? So whether the angles are adjacent or vertical, then find the value of x. So once again, I have two intersecting lines. They're asking us to identify angles that are opposite each other. So we know that these are vertical. We know that vertical angles are congruent. That means they're equal to each other. And if I want to find that value of x, I take those two angles and make them equal. So 4x has to equal 5x minus 30. So now I have an equation I can solve, combining the same terms on the same side. So I might as well subtract this 5x to get it over here with the other x, and that gives me a negative x is equal to negative 30. Now I'm going to divide by a negative 1, and I find out that x is equal to 30. X is equal to 30. That is not the angle measure. If I want to know what the actual angle measure is, I would come up here and I would go 4 times 30, and that equals 120 degrees. So this angle measures 120 degrees. The value of x is 30. Now let's see if that works. Because if I put 30 in here for 5x, 5 times 30 is 150, minus 30 does equal 120. So those two angles are vertical, they are congruent, they have the same angle measure. Moving right along, tell whether the angles are adjacent or vertical, find the value of x. I don't see any intersecting lines, so I see a shared line here with a shared vertex, so these are adjacent. Okay? These are adjacent angles. Now, one thing you need to know, anytime you see this box in here, that means it's a corner. And all corners, this box, the box, I'll call it the box denoter, the box indicator, that says that this angle right here, the one I made red, this big angle, that is 90 degrees. You may already know that, and that's important to know that, whether you knew it or not. So this box indicator here that you have on there says it's a box, and it says that angle is 90 degrees. So what do we know then? These two adjacent angles that share a vertex, share a side, are equal together to 90 degrees. So I can say 3x plus the 2x is equal to the 90. Combining like terms, 5x is 90. Dividing by 5, x is 18. Once again, the value of x is 18. These angles are not 18, but x is 18, and that's what it asked us to find, the value of x. If you wanted to know what the actual angle measures were, well, 2 times 18, that's 36 degrees for this angle. And 3 times 18, that's 54 degrees for that angle. 54 plus 36. Wow, that is also 90. It better be, or we didn't do it correct. And then one quick note. Notice, we're doing geometry. We're learning geometry terms. And we're taking something that we learned in Unit 3, which is used throughout all the math we're going to do from now on, solving equations. Solving equations with more than one variable in this particular case. Moving right along to our last example. No, it's not the last one. We have one more after this. All right, tell whether the angles are adjacent or vertical. Find the value of x. And as we can see, these lines do not intersect. They are together. They form a straight line. They form a straight angle. And they share this vertex here and have a common side. So these are adjacent. Add them together to equal 180. 3x plus x is 180. Combining like terms, 4x is 180. Dividing by 4, x equals 45. X equals 45 degrees. So x is 45 degrees. That means this angle is 45 degrees. And if I took 180, subtracted 45, I would find that the last angle is equal to 135. So this angle here is 135. They are adjacent angles because they share a vertex, they share a side. Together, they form a straight angle, and we use that information to help us find the value of x. Again, straight angles, they equal 180. Tell whether these angles are adjacent or vertical, then find the value of x. Whoa, here I have two intersecting lines. However, the two angles that they're asking us for, 80 and this one, 4x minus 140, they are together because they share a vertex and a side. So these two angles that they are asking us about are adjacent. And it just so happens that they form this straight angle. What do we know about straight angles? That's right, 180 degrees. So we can add the two. 80 plus the 4x minus 140 has to equal 180. Combining like terms, a negative 140 and positive 80 is negative 60. And then we have the 4x, and then we have equals 180. Adding 60 to both sides, 4x now equals 240. Dividing by 4, x equals 60 degrees. So that means this x is 60 degrees. The x is 60, not the angle, the x. If I wanted to know what the angle was, 4 times 60, 240, minus the 140 that they say gives us 100 degrees for this angle. Well, 100. You should have known that, because if this one is 80, the other one has to be 100 to make a total of 180. But we know how to find it. We know how to solve equations. We know how to put in math that we've used before to help us solve things now. All right? That's the end of this video. Our quick right number 2, tell whether the angles are adjacent or vertical. Number 1, or then find the value of x. Here's number 1. Please draw these. Please draw them. please label them with the appropriate labels, draw them, and then tell whether the angles are adjacent or vertical. Remember, this is the end of the video, so as you are drawing, remember, if you have any questions about this stuff, you need to come see me. As you work for the rest of the time on your assignment and you come across questions that you don't know how to answer, you're confused with them, those become questions that you ask in class before we get busy on our assignment. Begin working on your assignment, of course, when you're done with this quick write. You might take a quick break and then finish off your 45 minutes of time. And we're practicing. We're practicing our aggressiveness and urgency. We're practicing working faster, because if we work a little quicker, we become a little more focused. Not so fast that we're going to make stupid, silly errors, but fast enough that we require ourselves to focus a little bit more time, using our valuable time effectively. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure working with you tonight. I will see you in class tomorrow.